Bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Mm. Well, well, well. Hello, whoever, wherever, whenever you are, wherever you're here, whatever you're doing, however you got here. Thank you for showing up. And I gotta laugh. I mean, if what these guys are doing is deliberately like running with what I accuse them of, so that when I make an accusation about some people actively forming a deceptive religious cult, possibly with the eye to becoming a destructive political religious cult, sounds extreme. And I'm thinking, I'm really carrying it too far. I know I have my reasons for focusing on this topic because it has caused a lot of damage to people I love. But um, maybe I'm going too far. I start to doubt myself. Then they turn around and do something that says, not only am I right, but I didn't go far enough. Then I start thinking, well, wait a minute now. They got to be pulling my leg. They got to be looking at what I'm saying and going further. Of course, I'm talking about the Estuary cult, the TLC, this little corner YouTube cult. And recently, I did have a little bit of a run in with someone I thought was a nice guy. Name's Luke Thompson, and he's the Minneapolis organizer of Estuary. And he's been pushed heavily by Paul Vanderklay, the ringleader of the cult, as another leader in their inner circle. Paul Vanderklay is only pushing a few people, and they all have the same thing in common: highly questionable Christian connection, which is far more either political or weird psychological than Christian doctrine related. And that's questionable because Paul Vanderklay is a lifelong Reform Protestant, old school Protestant pastor, actual pastor of an actual bricks and mortar church that's part of the Christian Reformed Churches of North America, which is a conservative, old school Protestant denomination. And he's actively pastoring this church in Sacramento. So he's got cred, he's got credentials. And his actions are highly questionable as to what he's doing. It does not match with what somebody in his position should be expected to be doing. Among which was promoting this guy, Luke Thompson. And what I had to say about Luke Thompson, that I got a little bit angry at him because he came into my comments under one of my videos, bald faced lying about Paul Vanderklay, saying that I was wrong to say Paul Vanderklay was any kind of ringleader or, leadership figure, organizer of the estuary, which is absolutely true. Not, which he absolutely is. It's absolutely not true to call me a liar. And I pointed out that no, he's done this. Plus, on top of it, Luke Thompson was in the stream where Paul Vanderklay was introducing him and three or four other people as leaders to be, respected in this new group that Paul Vanderklay is pulling together. Then I pointed out that one of the political extremists, a real nasty Antifa activist, violent street thug. I mean, he doesn't look like a street thug. He looks like a gentle, middle aged white liberal Californian. But he wants to revive the Antifa riots and the BLM. He's really into George Floyd. I put out a challenge. He hasn't picked it up. You really want to do something for the black community? Go on out into your own black community, which is right there, all around you. Walk around. Ask them what they think of what happened around BLM. Not just the riots, but what was it, 3 or 4 mansions that woman, I think it was Maxine Waters, was the leader of that. Anyway, whoever she was, Maxine Waters did it, and then I think she was also the leader of the BLM movement. Took all their money and bought herself mansions and God knows what else with it. It didn't go to the black community, and they know that. And they're about fed up with that kind of thing going on, which is what Californians do. White liberal Californians raise money for black causes, and they have their pet token that gets a mansion or 2 or 3 or 4. And the money just generally disappears. Black folks ain't stupid. Takes them a while sometimes to catch on, but they're not stupid and they do catch on. Anyway, that is this Parker guy is Vanderclay's fundraiser, right? Now I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm going too far. I'm trying to back away from it because I really don't want to be right. I really would love it if the Estuary was an innocent social discussion club for people who want to talk about Christian topics from various points of view. That's what it bills itself as. And it would be nice if it were true. So I want to be wrong, but I'm not wrong. Not only does Luke Thompson double down on lying about Vanderclay in order to, he had to pay his ticket to be put into leadership. But now he opened up a stream this morning about, can we be friends with people we disagree with? And I had said that what I saw Luke Thompson being set up as in this, because when someone is setting up a destructive political extremist activist cult, it's designed to do several things. First thing it's designed to do is pull a lot of people into an economic support network. They don't get to know what's really going on. Then it pulls a few of them into a more active inner circle where they know a little bit of what's going on. The ones that are going to flow into Mark Parker, he's the BLM guy, his direction. They're going to be the ones that are activated to go out and do the dirty work when the cult becomes, when it activates, when it launches. It's not at the launch pad yet. It's getting there though. So, but what Luke Thompson's role is Mr. Touchy-feely, Mr. Relationship. Because I pointed out that Paul Vanderclay and the Estuary is set up to pull people away from the critical thinking, Christian ethics and Christian morality doctrinal discussions and pull them into emotional connection, erase critical thinking, because you're not willing to do irrational extremist things for an abstract idea. But you are willing to do, most people can be persuaded to do irrational things for an emotional connection. And I identified Luke Thompson as being the one that Paul Vanderclay, who is a Machiavellian narcissist, look that up, Machiavellian, Machiavellian, Machiavellian narcissist. And you will see that is an actual personality disorder that can be identified. And one of the marks of a Machiavellian narcissist is the fact that they don't just use people to glorify themselves the way the average narcissist does. They form groups of lieutenants who are specifically fitted. They're very good at finding people who will carry out certain tasks that the general of a destructive army, destructive cult wants carried out. Vanderclay is really good at that. He's pulled in Luke Thompson to be the touchy-feely guy who's been really guilt-tripping people about relationships. And today he went whole hog. I think they're preparing to launch because he started the game of guilt-tripping. If you disagree with someone, can you be friends with that person? And of course, the all the little cult dummies gather around and like they're arguing all the different points. Well, it depends on this or depends on that. And they're going to throw in some scriptures sooner or later. I haven't seen them do it yet, but I'm sure they'll get the unevenly yoked scripture and a few other comments in there to try to justify things. It doesn't matter. I'm not arguing doctrine or scriptures here. I'm looking at function and action of what the people are doing. See, that's what you need to look at when you're looking at a cult. Because a cult can be built on any kind of doctrinal foundation you want to set up, from Christian to any other form of religion. It's the functional positions that you want to look at. The functional position of Luke Thompson, touchy-feely guilt tripper. He's setting up the connections. Vanderklay's people are watching all of this and they're seeing, okay, so who's responding this way to Luke and how is he responding to Parker? And they decide who's going to be moved into what position. Parker took an interesting step also in a live stream launched today. Today is, I think it's the 11th of September. Wait, I can't pull that down. Just a minute. Let me get my other device here. I should have a calendar on the wall so I don't have to lose track of time. Okay, today's the 9th. September 9th, 2025. Thompson brings out his you can't be friends with someone that you disagree with. They're not talking about me, but they're talking about some people who criticize, Somebody out there is criticizing. It's like, yeah, they're talking about me. They're not going to admit it. I don't care. I know what I'm doing, and I'm doing it. There's a plan. Okay, trust the plan. Anyway, Parker is launching a real interesting thing. He's calling Vanderklay Bishop Vanderklay. He's doing it as a joke. Several of the others in his stream, a guy named Ron, who is another one of the inner circle there, and not a very bright guy from what I can see, and somebody else, Michael Sartori. Yeah. He's talking about having visited up to Living Stones. They're all pulling in now to become membership of the Living Stones cult. The Living Stones church is just, those poor people are just normal Dutch tradition Christian Reformed church people. They have no clue what kind of wolves, what kind of a wolf pack Vanderklay is leading. Now you've got at least 3 of them calling him bishop. Calling him bishop. And what's interesting, Parker is the one who's primarily an atheist political activist. In fact, he said something that was like the definition of total materialist Marxist Christianity, which is not Christianity because it's totally separate from the spiritual realm. I wish I could remember what it was. I'll remember it and come back in another stream with it. It was something he said about what people should be doing as Christians. And basically, it's defining Christian in terms of political action. The bishop thing is interesting because there are some independent Christian denominations that are quick to call a pastor a bishop. Um, Bishop tends to be a title over the other pastors. It tends to relate to, in most of the churches that have formal bishop positions, the bishop tends to be more involved with the material structure of the church, at least among Catholics. The bishop is the guy who basically handles parish real estate across the diocese. He's basically the one that decides policies that have to do with government. He's involved with the real world more than the spiritual world, or the material more than the spiritual. But there's also something about these organizations that nominate people as bishop. It makes me, it is a red flag. I can't put my finger on it exactly, but if they go a step beyond and they start using the word apostle, because bishops, in some of these independent organizations, a bishop is also related to the title apostle. Traditional Christians, both Catholic and Protestant, do not use the word apostle for any living human beings today. The definition of apostle has long been a person who was physically alive during the time that Jesus of Nazareth was physically walking around 2,000 years ago. And anyone after that, if they rise up in hierarchy, they might be called a bishop. But if you notice, if they start joking, and if they're joking around because I'm saying it, and they're just saying, oh, yeah, we're going to have some fun with the old lady. The fact is, you're supposed to be something of Christian authority in the sense of having influence and leadership in the world of Christian culture. You all pride yourself on your study, the scholarly studies of all these various translations of Holy Scripture and so on and so forth, and the philosophers, all the philosophical background. You can't be doing that and playing a LARP troll game at the same time. And the LARP troll game is setting up the cult, because ultimately, the kind of political, extremist, left wing, destructive, violent cult that Paul Vander Clay and his friends are setting up under the camouflage of the Estuary ecumenical discussion groups. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be political violence. That's why they're doing it. They need to cover the money with some kind of fake charitable front. Vander Clay is probably not going to be allowed to use the title Christian Reformed Church. I don't know too much about the CRC North America. Maybe he's high enough in it, and maybe this guy that's also like the silent partner there that keeps behind the scenes but has a lot of influence, John Van Donk, another old school Dutch Reformed Protestant. Maybe they are high enough in the CRC of North America, the Christian Reformed Church of North America. Maybe they are high enough to declare themselves bishops, or to declare Vander Clay a bishop. But if they're not, and Vander Clay's got his people floating it out there, and he was in the chat. He was in the chat while Parker, Sartori, and that guy Ron were doing this. He wasn't correcting them. He wasn't backing off from it. If they're going to float that out there, basically they're launching as an independent religious group. And it's not religious, it's political. Because Parker is doubling down on the left wing violence. And while they're doing that, Luke Thompson is headed in the direction of we're going to have to purge the TLC and the estuary of anybody who's a little bit too fuzzy on what's actually going on here. As soon as somebody in leadership of a religious organization, or any organization for that matter, but as soon as somebody in the leadership circle, even if it's just the informal influencer level of leadership, as soon as they start promoting the pick a side campaign, you can't be friends with someone you disagree with. You know they're fixing to move forward some significant steps. So that's all I have to say about it. I have to laugh because once again, I made a few videos, took a day off, doing some sewing, working on stuff with my neighbors, thinking, man, I really need to back away from saying all these nasty things about those poor estuary innocent people. Then I turn it on and there it is. You know, I can laugh, but we're talking some real war here. Real war. I mean, what Parker is too stupid to see, and these people, most of them are so stuck in their kumbaya bubbles, they don't see. Nobody was told about the raids that just hit Chicago. There's been more and more action coming out, real action, serious raids, hundreds of people being rounded up. It is roundup time, and they're coming out secretly. No announcements. The Democrats love to talk about transparency because transparency means you tell me before you punch me, okay? So that I can be ready. It's like, no, if we're in a fight and I'm going to punch you, you already know we're in a fight. That's all you need to know. Alongside those secret raids that just started up in Chicago, and you've got Paul Vanderklay's little pseudo-Christian cult really pushing the politics and the left wing and the pick a side crap today, starting today. There's been a revival of talk about George Floyd, but it isn't the talk that Parker wants to hear. It's the recognition of what was just done to that Ukrainian woman, a legal immigrant on a train in North Carolina, and the Democrats, the filthy, rotten, white liberal Democrats, actually tried to start a GoFundMe for the illegal immigrant who stabbed her to death. And it was video. The White House has come out about how atrocious this is. The media, the mainstream media, the stuff that Vanderklay and Parker and the other monsters calling themselves Christian like to suck up to, actually wanted to make some kind of martyr out of the man who was seen insanely, just randomly coming at that woman from behind and stabbing her to death. She was sitting there totally oblivious to the fact that this guy was coming up behind her, just doing something on her phone, riding home from work. An immigrant working in a pizza parlor. Michael Parker doesn't care about her. He cares about the illegal who apparently, from some of what was said, had been arrested and found, prosecuted for crimes 14 times and was still running around loose. That's what the White House said. They're going to start looking into some of this stuff. There are going to be arrests made of mayors of blue cities. That's why Vanderklay is trying to launch his satanic left-wing cult. He's been setting it up for a long time. But he's got a problem. 5 years ago, most affluent, white, liberal, middle Christians were foolish enough to buy into the Marxist crap. They were foolish enough to believe the pity party crap, but they don't anymore. That's why I laughed about the whole George Floyd thing. I said, go into the Black community and ask people what they think. Ask the Black community how they feel about being replaced by illegals who never gave nothing to this country, who come here with their hands out demanding stuff. And all of the injustice of slavery in American history, one thing it does have is that Black Americans built this country. They may have been slaves, and that may be an injustice that has yet to be fully recompensed. But nobody doubts that this is their country. And here are these white, Christian, liberal pieces of crap trying to elevate these thugs over them. No justice, no peace. Think about it. Bishop Vanderklay. Think about it, Mark Parker. Think about it, Luke Thompson. No justice. There was no justice for my daughter. There was no justice for that woman, that Ukrainian woman on that train. There was no justice for that woman that was killed by the illegal, unlicensed driver or illegally licensed driver. He was illegal. Couldn't drive. Killed her. Drunk driver. No justice for her? Well, they got the ice raids named after her now, or named to be in honor of her. Because we're taking back that slogan. We're taking that slogan. Bishop Vanderklay, Mark Parker, Mark D. Parker, Luke Thompson. No justice, no peace. God bless some, have mercy on some, and to hell with the rest. Denise Matteau, over and out.